Please, Miss Hale, I need this job, Ruth said, her voice already shaking as the sun was just pushing a soft orange line over the tall pines behind the big white house in Buckhead. Her brown hands clung to the laundry basket like it was a shield, and a broken crystal vase lay in pieces between her and the woman in the silk robe. Victoria Hale stood barefoot on the cold marble, arms crossed, tight over her chest, blonde hair pulled up in a loose knot, not even looking at the vase but straight at Ruth like she was something stuck to the bottom of her foot. You dropped a $10,000 vase, Ruth, Victoria said, each word slow and sharp, and I am not going to pay you to break my things and make excuses. Ruth swallowed, her eyes bright with tears she was trying hard not to let fall. I said, I'm sorry, ma'am, she whispered. I tripped on the rug, that's all. I've been here 6 years. I never stole from you, never lied to you. Please, my grandson's pills. Her voice broke, and she pressed her lips together. Victoria glanced at the tall clock in the hallway, all smooth gold and quiet ticking. She had a live TV interview at 8, a call with New York at 9, and an investor flying in by noon. Her stomach churned from too much black coffee and not enough sleep, and that sharp, scared voice in her head said, if something goes wrong today, we lose everything. I don't have time for drama, Ruth, she snapped. Go pack your things. You're done here. I'll have your last check sent. Ruth stared at her like she had not heard right, like the words did not fit into her ears. You're firing me? Because of a vase. Victoria's eyes flashed. Because I need people I can trust, she said. I saw you near my jewelry box yesterday. I'm not stupid. A flush rose up Ruth's dark neck. I was dustin', like always, she said, low and tight. And that one dropped, made Victoria's jaw clench in a way she did not even notice, but Ruth did. For the first time, Ruth straightened her back, instead of bending it. I never touched what's not mine, Miss Hale, not in your house, not in nobody's. For a second, Victoria almost saw her. Rhea saw the woman who had folded her sheets, ironed her dresses, wiped her son's tears when he fell off the backyard swing, but the fear in her chest was louder. She was 42, the face of her own beauty brand, the woman they put on glossy magazine covers with text that said things like grace and grit, and the idea of a maid breaking her things, seeing her messy kitchen at 5 a.m., knowing she cried in the pantry some nights, felt like an attack. I said, you're done, she repeated, turning away, her bare heels clicking on the floor. Leave your key on the counter. Ruth's mouth opened like she was going to say one more thing, maybe bring up all the times she had stayed late without pay when Victoria's son was sick, or the morning she had picked up Victoria from the bathroom floor after a panic attack, but no sound came. She set the laundry basket down, pulled the key from her apron, and laid it gently next to the family photo by the coffee maker. Then she walked out the front door into the cool, pink morning, carrying the same small blue suitcase she had first brought 6 years ago. While inside the alarm beeped, the house lights brightened, and Victoria told herself she had done what any strong boss would do. The bus stop on Peachtree. Road smelled like wet pavement and car exhaust, and as Ruth sat on the cracked plastic bench with her suitcase between her knees, she watched black SUVs and shiny sports cars roll past like they were in some other world. Her dark gray uniform still smelled faintly of the lemon polish she used on Victoria's counters, and her back ached from yesterday's deep clean. But the thing that hurt worst was the tight knot in her chest, right where all her prayers lived. An older man in a Falcons jacket nodded at her as he waited for the bus, and Ruth tried to give him a small smile, but it came out crooked. When the bus hissed to a stop and the doors folded open, Ruth climbed on, slid her worn card through the reader, and took a seat by the window. As the big houses and tall trees of Buckhead rolled away and the streets changed to smaller homes with peeling paint and front porches full of plastic chairs, she let one tear slide down her face, then another, wiping them quick with the back of her hand so the little boy across the aisle would not stare. By the time the bus turned onto Burr Street in southwest Atlanta, the sun was higher and the air was already heavy and warm. Ruth pulled her suitcase up the steps of her small brick house, the one with the bright yellow door she had painted herself last summer, and before she could put the key in the lock, the door swung open. "Grandma," Kayla shouted, flinging herself into Ruth's arms. She was 8, all skinny legs, braids, and wide brown eyes that saw more than any child should. "You're home early," she said, pulling back. "You sick?" Behind her, Ruth's daughter Tasha stood with a dish towel over one shoulder, worry lines deep in her forehead. "Ma?" Tasha asked, even though her eyes already knew. Ruth forced a smile and stepped inside, the house smelling of grits and fried eggs. "They let me go," she said softly, setting the suitcase down by the couch. "Knocked over some fancy glass, and Miss Hale decided she didn't need me no more." Tasha's jaw tightened the way Ruth's had in the hall. "After all you'd done for that woman," she said, her voice low, so Kayla wouldn't catch the sharp edges. "Please. She don't know what she just lost." Ruth shook her head, but her eyes slid to the little orange pill bottles lined up on the counter, the ones with Kayla's name on them for her asthma and her seizures. "Bills don't care how she treats me," Ruth murmured. "They still come." She walked to the small bedroom she shared with Kayla and knelt by the metal box under the bed, the one with the bank papers and the church program from her husband's funeral and a single, worn photo of her in a black dress, standing next to a smiling man in a suit in front of a small office with a hand-painted sign that read, "Carter & Sons Janitorial." Her fingers rested on the picture for a long second. "I promised you I'd do good with what we got, Leon," she whispered. "I'm trying, but I ain't letting nobody step on me no more. You hear?" She closed the box with a small click, the sound soft but firm in the quiet room. On the other side of the city, in a glass tower that caught the morning sun like a mirror, Victoria sat in a sleek conference room with a cappuccino going cold by her hand, while her financial advisor, a thin man named Eric, scrolled through charts on a tablet. "The good news is, your brand is still hot," he said, smiling like everything on the screen was a fun game. "Followers are up. The last product launch did great online." Victoria waited. She knew there was a but coming. There had been a but for the last 6 months. "But," Eric went on, his smile dimming, "you're stretched, Vic. The big house, the cars, the office lease, the new factory in Macon. It all adds up. Those lines of credit your investor guaranteed. The bank wants to see fresh proof of support, today. If D. Carter Holdings doesn't sign this afternoon, the bank can call your loans." Victoria rubbed her temples. "D.I. Carter again," she muttered. She had never met the person behind that name. All she knew was that, 3 years ago, when her little online shop started to explode faster than she could handle, a quiet firm out of nowhere had offered a lifeline. They had wired money, signed papers through lawyers, and stayed in the background while she smiled for cameras and told stories about how she had built everything from the ground up. "They're coming here at 3, right?" she asked, trying to make her voice sound cool, like she had another 10 investors lined up outside. Eric nodded. "They moved the meeting from my office to your house," he said. "Said they wanted to see how things really run." Victoria's stomach tightened. The house that did not have a maid anymore because she had fired Ruth in a fit at dawn. "Fine," she said, standing up so fast her chair bumped the wall. "I'll make it perfect." While she sped home in her white SUV, knuckles tight on the wheel. Ruth walked down a quieter street and pushed open the door of a small law office above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon. The bell over the door jingled, and a middle-aged black man in a gray suit looked up from his desk and smiled. "Morning, Miss Carter," he said, standing and reaching for her hand. "I heard from your daughter. You all right?" Ruth let out a breath she had been holding since dawn. "I'm tired, Mr. Lewis," she said. but I'm done pretending." He nodded and waved her into a chair. On the wall behind him hung a framed copy of the first contract they had signed together, back when her husband's cleaning company had been just them and a few mops. "You know the bank is nervous," Mr. Lewis said gently. "If you pull your name from Ms. Hale's loans, they move fast." Ruth's eyes were steady now. "She fired me like I was trash," she said. "I've been cleaning that house and watching her talk on TV about how kind she is, how she lifts up women. She don't lift the ones wiping her counters. I invested in her because I thought her heart matched her words." She folded her hands, rough from years of scrubbing. "It don't. So today, we're gonna fix that." By 1:30, Victoria's house did not feel perfect at all. The temp cleaning crew she had begged her friend's agency to send had come late and left early, leaving streaks on the floor and a strange smell in the bathroom. Her son's video game still lay under the coffee table, and the spot where the crystal vase had broken was now bare, a pale ring on the wooden stand like a missing tooth. Victoria rushed from room to room in tight jeans and a silk blouse, tossing stray shoes into closets, straightening pillows, snapping at the dog when he followed her, tail wagging. "Go lay down, Cooper," she snapped, and the golden retriever slunk away. Her phone buzzed, non-stop with messages from her assistant, from the TV station, from a friend sending a link to a gossip site that had posted a blurry photo of her airport outfit from last week. All of it felt like too much noise. She kept thinking of the empty space by the kitchen where Ruth usually stood at this hour, making sure the counters gleamed. For a flicker of a second, she imagined calling her back, saying, "I overreacted. I'm sorry. Can you please come help?" But pride rose up and stamped that thought down. At 2:55, a dark sedan rolled to a smooth stop by the front gate. Victoria stood in the foyer, smoothing her hair, heart hammering so loud she could feel it in her ears. Through the tall glass, she saw a driver step out and open the back door. She squared her shoulders, ready for some stiff older man in a navy suit or a young tech guy in sneakers. Instead, a brown hand, familiar and sure, gripped the doorframe. Out stepped Ruth, dressed not in her gray uniform, but in a simple dark blue dress and flat black shoes, her hair pulled back, a small pearl at each ear. For a second, Victoria thought she was seeing things. Her mouth actually fell open. Behind Ruth climbed a woman in a black blazer with a leather folder, and then Mr. Lewis, who had been on the other side of the city with her an hour earlier. But Victoria did not know that. The front door opened before she could move, because the driver, used to such houses, knew where to find the hidden button. Ruth stepped into the foyer, and the house seemed to shift around her, the light catching the tired lines on her face that Victoria had never really noticed. "Ruth," Victoria breathed. "What are you doing here?" "I told you." Ruth lifted her chin, and for the first time since Victoria had known her, there was no "yes ma'am" in her eyes. "Good afternoon, Miss Hale," she said, her voice calm. "I'm here for our 3 o'clock meeting." Victoria blinked hard. "What meeting?" she demanded, though her voice wobbled. Mr. Lewis stepped forward, offering a card. "David Lewis," he said. "I represent D. Carter Holdings. This is Ms. Denise Carter, our principal." The words hung in the air like slow raindrops. Denise Carter. Victoria's eyes flew to Ruth. "You," she whispered. "You're D. Carter." Ruth let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. "I am," she said quietly. "I helped pay for this house. I helped pay for your factory. I was the friend with money you liked to talk about on those calls. But you never asked my full name. You just called me Ruth." They sat in the living room, the one the magazines always wanted to photograph, with its white couch and big windows and perfect plants. But now the air felt heavy and strange. The lawyer in the blazer laid out papers on the glass coffee table, while Cooper, confused by all the new people, sat by the door, head on his paws. Victoria's mind spun as she tried to fit the image of Ruth wiping down the stove with the woman across from her, who now held a pen like it meant something. "I don't understand," Victoria said, though inside she knew, piece by piece, like a puzzle she had not wanted to see. "You clean houses. How do you?" She stopped herself, but the words were already there, ugly and small. Ruth's mouth curved in a sad smile. "I cleaned houses with my mama when I was Kayla's age," she said. "My husband and I started our own company. We worked nights and days, saved every extra dollar. He was smart with numbers. We got one big contract, then another. When he passed, God rest him, I sold the business. I took that money and told Mr. Lewis I wanted to help other folks start something, especially women who said they wanted to do good." She looked around the room, at the art, the tall shelves full of books, with Victoria's face on the back cover. "3 years ago, I saw you on TV," she went on. "You talked about growing up poor, about wanting to lift up other girls like you. I believed you, so I invested. But I didn't want to be just a name on a paper. I wanted to see who you really were when no camera was on. So I took the job when your agency called, looking for a maid. Same last name, but you never asked about that either. You just liked that I worked hard and kept quiet." Victoria felt heat wash over her face as memory after memory flickered past. Times she had snapped at Ruth over small things. Times she had walked past without a thank you. Times she had bragged on podcasts about treating her team like family and then made Ruth stay late with no extra pay. "If you had told me who you were, I would have." She started, but Ruth held up a hand. "That's the point, Ms. Hale," she said. "I wanted to know how you treat people when you think they can never do anything for you." She nodded toward the empty stand where the vase once sat. "This morning, I found out." Victoria grabbed for the one thing that always gave her comfort: control. "Fine," she said, forcing her voice steady. "You're the investor. You're mad. I overreacted. I'll hire you back. We'll laugh about this one day, tell it on stage at some women's conference. Talk about hard lessons." She even tried a smile, the one she used on camera. "You don't want to pull your money. It would hurt both of us. Think about the jobs." Mr. Lewis cleared his throat. "We have thought about the jobs," he said, "and the bank. If Ms. Carter removes her name from your guarantees, they will demand full payment on your loans by close of business." He slid a paper toward Victoria. "Right now, you don't have enough cash to cover that." For the first time, the words didn't sound like numbers. They sounded like a cold wind. "Are you saying I could lose the house?" Victoria asked softly. "The company." Ruth met her eyes. "I'm saying you stand to lose what my money built," she said, "unless something changes, for real, and not just in a speech." For the next hour, the tall clock in the hall seemed to tick louder than usual, every swing of its brass pendulum eating up the time between safety and something else Victoria had never allowed herself to picture. She paced by the window, while Ruth sat still, hands folded. "You don't know what it's like to have everything on your shoulders," Victoria burst out at last. "I grew up in a trailer in Macon. My mama cleaned houses too. My dad drank. I swore I would never be at anyone's mercy again. Do you know how hard I worked for this?" Ruth's gaze did not waver. "I know what it's like to work till your fingers crack," she said quietly. "I know what it's like to scrub rich folks' toilets and pretend not to hear when they talk like you ain't in the room. And I know what it's like to have choices now and still feel like a scared little girl inside. Money don't fix that." Victoria stopped pacing. "Then why are you doing this?" she asked. "Why are you trying to tear me down?" Ruth shook her head. "I'm not trying to tear you down," she said. "I'm trying to stop feeding something that's already broken. I didn't put my husband's years of work into this world, so somebody could use that money while stepping on the same kind of people we used to be." She leaned forward a little. "When you yelled at me this morning, you didn't just fire a maid. You showed me who you really are when nobody's watching. You thought I was less. You said you didn't trust me after I watched your boy when you were traveling, after I covered for you when you came home too tired to stand. That told me everything I needed to know. Eric called twice, his name flashing on Victoria's phone, but she let it buzz and buzz on the table. She thought of the girls who messaged her online, saying, "You're my hero, your goals," and of the women in her office who stayed late to pack boxes, of the warehouse crew in Macon who wore her logo on their shirts. "If you pull out, they lose their jobs," she whispered. "Not just me." Ruth nodded slowly. "That's what's tearing me up in here," she admitted, pressing a hand to her chest. "I don't want to hurt them. That's why I came myself, not just sent a letter. I came to see if there was any part of the girl from that TV show still left in you. The one who said she wanted to make life better for the people nobody saw." She took a deep breath. "I won't keep your loans up so you can stay big and cruel. But I also won't let all those folks fall with you if you're ready to change. So here's what I'm willing to do." By 4 o'clock, papers lay in neat stacks on the coffee table, each with yellow sticky flags where signatures needed to go. The lawyer explained them in slow, careful words, making sure there were no tricks. "This document moves controlling interest in Hale Beauty from Ms. Hale alone to a new trust," she said, tapping one page. "The Carter Community Trust. It will own the company and this house. Profits will go into a fund for training, health care, and fair wages for employees and for local girls who want to learn business." She turned another page. "Ms. Hale will stay on as director with a set salary, no more bonus checks, no more fancy add-ons. Her face can stay on the bottles if the board votes for it, but she answers to the trust." Victoria stared at the papers like they were written in a language she had never seen. "You want me to sign away everything I built?" she asked, her voice a mix of anger and disbelief. "My house, my company. For what? Some charity project?" Ruth's eyes flashed for the first time that day. "That charity project is my life's work," she said. "I've been meeting with girls at the church basement for 2 years now. Some of them walk an hour just to sit and learn how to balance a checkbook, how to write a resume. I had this dream, Ms. Hale. This big pretty house full of light where those same girls could come, get training, get jobs, see what's possible. I thought I'd have to wait a few more years. Then I saw how you treated the people who already work for you, and I knew, either this place changes or it becomes a shell. No soul." Outside, the sky had started to turn the pale milk blue that came before evening. Traffic hummed on the road beyond the gate. Victoria thought of the first time she had walked into this house, when it was just bare floors and echoes, and how she had stood in the empty living room and said out loud, "I did it." She thought of the nights she had lain awake, counting unpaid invoices in her head, yet still ordering another marble table because it would look good on Instagram. Her throat tightened. "If I don't sign?" she asked. Mr. Lewis glanced at the clock. "The bank's deadline is 6 p.m., he said. "If Ms. Carter doesn't show support by then, they start their process. By sunset, you could have papers in your hand saying they're taking the house and moving to seize the business assets. It will be messy. Lawyers, court. You might drag it out, but odds are, you lose more than you do here." The air in the room felt thin. Victoria sat down hard on the edge of the couch. Cooper lifted his head and laid it on her knee, whining softly. She buried her fingers in his fur, her mind racing through every word, every number, every what if. "You're asking me to give up being the boss," she said, "to be an employee." The word tasted bitter. Ruth leaned back, her gaze kind but firm. "I'm asking you to stop acting like your worth comes from what you own," she said. "You'd still be doing what you're good at, talking to people, selling ideas. Only now, the people who pack the boxes and sweep the floors would have a say in how things run too. In this house, it would be full of more than just pretty things. It would be full of lives changing." She paused, letting that picture hang between them, You said once in an interview that you wanted to leave a legacy. This is a real one. Not just your name on a bottle, but your name on hearts. The silence stretched so long that the ticking clock almost sounded like it was teasing them. At last, Victoria stood again and walked to the big front window. From there she could see her reflection, pale and tired, superimposed over the driveway, the gate, the street beyond. She remembered waking up in this house for the first time, the taste of freedom, and then waking up here months later feeling like she was in a pretty prison she had to work non-stop to keep. Behind her, papers rustled softly as the lawyer checked her watch. "You got 20 minutes, she said gently. "Banks don't wait." Victoria closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, she saw Ruth this morning, hands shaking, begging, and saw herself, cold as the marble floor. She saw her mama's back bent over a stranger's bathtub, the way her hands had cracked from bleach and hot water, and heard her own 14-year-old voice say, "I'm gonna make it so you never have to do this again." Somewhere along the way, making it had turned into making herself feel big by keeping others small. Without turning, she said, "If I sign, do I still get to live here?" There was a pause. "For now," the lawyer answered. "The trust will own the house. We can work out an agreement where you stay as caretaker, at least until the training center moves in fully. You won't be its queen anymore, but you won't be out on the street either." Victoria let out a breath that sounded like a laugh and a sob in one. "Queens fall fast, huh?" she murmured. She turned to face Ruth. "You're really giving me a choice." Ruth nodded. "A hard one," she said, "but a choice. That's more than most of us ever got." Victoria walked back to the table, her legs feeling strange, like they belonged to someone else. She picked up the pen, the same kind she had used to sign book deals and brand partnerships, and stared at her name printed on the line, Victoria Hale, owner. Her hand shook. "When I put this pen down," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else, "I won't be that woman anymore." Ruth's voice was soft but steady. "Maybe you'll be a better one," she said. Victoria pressed the pen to the first page and began to sign. It felt like watching a tall tower she had stacked block by block for years, slowly lean and fall, each stroke another piece tumbling. She signed the second paper, then the third, ink drying almost before she could lift her hand. By the time the last signature was done, the sky outside had gone the color of a peach, soft orange and pink bleeding into each other, and the shadows in the living room stretched long. Mr. Lewis gathered the papers, slid them carefully into a folder, and checked his phone. "I'll send scans to the bank now," he said. "They'll have them before 6. Victoria sat very still, hands in her lap, feeling hollow and oddly light at the same time. Her phone buzzed again, and this time she answered. It was Eric, voice high and tight. "Vic, I've been calling you," he started, but she cut him off. "I know," she said. "Tell the bank D. Carter is in, but it's not just me anymore. We're changing things. I signed it." There was a stunned pause on the other end. "You? What?" he stammered. Victoria almost smiled. "I'll explain tomorrow," she said, and hung up before he could argue. When she looked up, Ruth was watching her with an expression Victoria could not quite read. "I lost everything, didn't I?" Victoria said quietly. "The house, the company, the fancy title, all of it gone by sunset." Ruth tilted her head. "You lost the part you thought made you somebody," she said. "The stuff money bought. You didn't lose your hands, or your mind, or your heart. You just gave them a different job to do." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "I'll be back in a few days with the board. We'll talk about how to tell your staff, how to bring them in." Today was about saving what could be saved before the bank took it all and sold it piece by piece. They walked together to the front door. The driver opened it, and warm evening air poured in, smelling faintly of cut grass and someone's grill in the distance. On the porch, Victoria hesitated. "Ruth," she said, When Ruth turned, she saw not the stiff, cold woman from Dawn, but someone smaller, shoulders a little slumped, eyes wet. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered. "Not just because I almost lost my stuff. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for never asking about your life, for talking about my journey while you were the one quietly holding up my whole house." Ruth's face softened. "I can't pretend it didn't hurt," she said. "But I also know hurt people hurt people. Maybe this is how that stops, right here." As the sedan pulled away and the last light slid down the white columns of the big house, Victoria sat on the top step with Cooper leaning against her leg, listening to the crickets start their night song and feeling the strange deep quiet inside her where fear used to live. She thought of waking up at dawn, sure she was in control of everything, and sitting here now, knowing she owned almost nothing but feeling more honest than she had in years. She knew the next day would be hard, and the day after that, and that some people would call her crazy when they found out what she had signed away, and others would call her fake no matter what she did. But as she watched the sky turn from peach to deep purple, she also knew one simple, solid truth that settled in her chest like a new kind of wealth. Because in the end she had learned that when you build your life on top of other people instead of beside them, you may look rich for a while, but the moment you forget their worth is the moment you risk losing everything that really matters.